Good evening and a very warm welcome to you. Thank you for joining the Oz Cro Soccer Show. It's episode 21 and we are absolutely chuffed to have your company here tonight. It's going to be a massive show. Strap yourselves in, folks. It is going to be one hell of a show. My name's Tonci. It's a pleasure to be here with you as every week I do. And as he's every week alongside me, good evening, Josip. We may be separated by about 2,000 kilometres, but it doesn't matter when we come together and share all the news and views from the Australian-Croatian football scene. How are you?
Yeah, good. Thanks, Tonci, and thanks for having me on once again. And welcome to our viewers. And I'm really looking forward to this show once again. Every week we seem to be able to come up with something that's just clicking over the grey matter, and no better pun intended there, because we've got a great guest to really tickle our grey matter today.
Well, we've got some breaking news all the way from Croatia. That's happened probably in the last 15 minutes as well. So we'll be talking about some of the latest news. This is a big news if you're a Dinamo or Zagreb fan. We've got heaps and heaps of news. We've got some footage, some classic footage that happened in the last 24 hours in Croatia. Once again, from the great man, the V-Bomber. He had an interview, and he very rarely has interview, but he had an interview with a Croatian talk show host, Dubravko Šimens, who some of you follow Croatian sport as a water polo player. He now has a talk show on the Catholic television channel Laudato TV. And it's available on YouTube. And we've got some great footage. You don't want to miss that. But Josip, who have we got on tonight's show?
Tonight we have an acclaimed psychologist and author of a fantastic book, The Performance Mindset, 7 Steps to Success in Sport and Life, where Anthony Klarica reveals the secrets behind high-performing athletes and can show us how to build strategies to apply greater success in sport, business, and in your personal life. It'll be a great conversation to have. We know plenty of young players we've had a chat to throughout this year already who could really leverage off this information.
Yeah, mate. There's the book, The Performance Mindset. It is a ripper book. It's only come out in the last, I think, 2 weeks he's released it. We are so lucky to have Anthony Klarica, a Melbourne-based psychologist, sports psychologist. But let me just read you, Josip, from the back cover, if you like, this paragraph. And I think if any talk about a lot of young elite players of Australian Croatian, Nikolas Bilokapic just recently, and all of these players, they talk about a lot of the sacrifices they need to make. But get a read of this. High performers are made, not born. High performance are putting a careful and deliberate focus on growing mindset, and science proves that high performers intentionally build these mindset skills and habits to maximize their opportunities. Talent and hard work are simply not enough. Mate, we've talked a lot about Croatia as a sporting nation, as a well above it. But look, here in Australia, as a small community in proportion to other communities, the Croatian community, we well above our weight here in Australia as well, and really sort of goes hand in hand. I suppose not just about this sporting success, but just in life in general as well.
Yeah, I agree. I had the opportunity to listen to Anthony's podcast with Dwayne Russell on SCN that he had some time ago. And you hear about things such as mindset. Okay, I think it's thrown around a bit, and it's good to hone in on what that means for for you. But I think the terms around resilience and that grit to come back from setbacks and what it takes to do that and not beat yourself up and find ways to progress forward. And that's the parts that I think Anthony can shine the light on a little bit tonight, and just start to open up those layers for people who are interested in these sorts of things. We know between you and I, Tonci, there's many players that we've seen at North Geelong. We've had the privilege to see a lot of young, talented players who are starting to come up to those older age groups in the juniors, and they'll be looking for these little snippets to help them get through that next stage of life.
Yeah, absolutely. Now I've got a really big surprise when Anthony does come on the show. All I'm just going to say is bring out your pen and paper, take notes, because it's going to be well worth it. A big surprise for you guys, the viewers. Okay, so if you're tuning in live, you've got the head start over all of those that will not watch it live, that will watch it later on, to watch the full replay. But that's it. That's all I'm going to say. We're going to take a very, very short break. When we return, Josip, straight into the news. Boy, have we got a lot to get through. So don't go away, folks. The Australian-Croatia scene with Josip Zilic coming up right after this break.
Welcome back to the Oz Cro Soccer Show, and in episode 21's news around the country today. So as we review the round that just happened over in Victoria, Tonci, Melbourne Knights. The Melbourne Knights men unfortunately had a 3-2 loss to Heidelberg. Going down early, putting them behind the 8 ball. They fought hard throughout the match, and in watching that, you can see that when that third goal went in for the 3-1, it was like a switch. You can see the guys really trying to dig deep and find a way forward. At 3-2, I thought they had Heidelberg, but they just couldn't find that extra step to get a third or even a fourth goal. But anyway, the 9th place Knights now have a Crow derby to face on Friday night at home, and they're taking on St Albans.
Oh,
the Knights women, that should
be fun. That should be really good. Yeah.
And well, look. So when I get to the St Albans bit, we'll do our usual rev up. But the women's team, they took on Burundara, coming away with a disappointing 5-1 loss there. So they're not having the greatest of times, the women's team at Melbourne Knights, but they are, they're pushing themselves, and they're trying to get the results there. But it's not dire straits. They'll get there. St Albans on Friday night, they had their grand opening of the lights, and they had the dignitaries available there with the local MP. So an opportunity for the community to celebrate one step forward in the progress of their infrastructure development. So congratulations, St Albans Dynamo. We heard from them a couple of times this year how important these steps are for them and the growth of their club and their vision that they have. So Ilya Dragicevic, John Bilosh, and Mark Maric and Rosa and the gang, and there's plenty others involved. I can't get through them all, Ivan Mioch. Well done. Congratulations. And here's to many more steps in your successful path on your infrastructure development. The men's team, they had a 0-0 draw, a really gritty game there with Bentley. It was the first time they haven't copped a goal, I think, in 4 or 5 games. So to come up against Bentley, who've had a bit of a rise in form, and just to block the goals from coming through was probably a step in the right direction, in my opinion, for Kruni Razov's men. And it's the stuff that they can build on. And now, Tonci, here we talk about the derby coming up on Friday night. You've got Dynamo, who's found a way to be resolute. You've got Knights who keep scoring. All right, Knights aren't winning every game, but they've found a way to score every week now, the Knights. So this is really going to set the stage for a fantastic blockbuster.
Yeah, they picked up a couple of new recruits as well, mid-season recruits as well. So that'll be interesting to see how they go as well. But it's one of those games. One, the form book goes out the window. It's a derby, and it's a big derby as well. But not any Brat a favour in this one. This is a real big. It is a blockbuster in many ways. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree, mate. It's going to be a good test for the guys. And Melbourne fans, Western suburbs, all over the city, even down in Geelong. Get yourselves down to Melbourne Knights Friday night. You know the hospitality is going to be fantastic. You know there's going to be a festa. You all get together and have a good time. Why not take in some football and enjoy the atmosphere with two two Croatian clubs. And whoever wins at the end, I'm sure they'll be deserved winners. But after the game, continue your festa and enjoy the festivities. Speaking of St Albans too, Tonci, the women's team, they went down to Maribyrnong 3-2 this week. They take on Hoppers Crossing on Friday night at home. So over to Dandenong.
Dandenong City, yeah. What's happening? Now Dandenong City, yes. Look at the jubilation
Massive win. Look at that. Look at the fans on the side. Look at that. Clarissa in the middle with his 2 thumbs up. He's just giving it the big you beauty. And Joey Clarissa there too. Fantastic. And Stocko as well in the checkered shirt. He's gone all country bumpkin on us. But, yeah, good to see. I was delighted for the guys. So they've been working really hard. And, good to see the fruit of their labour coming off. And here's to many more for you guys to build up as the second stage of the season starts to draw near.
Yep.
The women's team, they had a bye. Next week, they take the 5th place Dandy women take on Mentone away. Continuing on, the MPL theme, MPL 2, North Geelong men. They succumb to a bit of second half pressure. Slightly undermanned still in their home match against Langwarrin. They started off nicely in the first 20 minutes, up 1-0. Looking to be in control after Nelson Salvatore's nice finish from Johnny Pikett's hard work. But second half, the lethargy seemed to be kicking in, and it looked like Langy ran over the top there, and could have actually maybe put a bit more pressure on and got a win. But unfortunately, a last-minute penalty occurred and a 1-1 draw in the end. They have the tough road trip this week to Goblin Valley Suns. Hasn't been a happy hunting ground for the Warriors, and they'll be looking to get the winner there to keep the buffer away from Moreland City, who sit in second.
It would be disappointing if they don't win this one, because Goulburn Valley, I think, have only recorded 2 draws all season. They're looking like relegation material, and I think the last time these two sides met, it was like a 7-0 thumping, or 7-0 or 8-0 from memory. Yeah, that was at home. Yeah. But a crucial game for North Geelong. They were at one stage 7 points ahead. Now that lead has been dissolved to just 2 points ahead. So they're still on top, Moreland City second, and there's a bit of a buffer there. I think Moreland City and Moreland Zebras now play against each other, so that's a big one. But whilst on the subject of North Geelong, the Geelong Region Soccer Show podcast on a Monday night. Next Monday night, it is a North Geelong themed show, so we will have some guests from the North Geelong Soccer Club once again, and once again, that's courtesy of a very, very good club sponsor down there, Harcourt's North Geelong, and the Grgic family. Good on Joe and Mario and Helena. They'll be sponsoring the Oz Cro Soccer Show podcast. So 8 o'clock on Monday night. Do tune in, folks, and you'll find out all the latest with North Geelong. What's going on there?
Yeah, continuing on North Geelong, the women's team back to winning ways for the women's team with a solid 4-1 win over Clifton Hill at home. Goals to Lara Herrick and Zoe Tizard, and a special shout out, a little bit of alert here, proud father moment. My daughter Jasmine scored her first senior goal for North Geelong. A well floated ball from distance to beat the keeper. Well done, Jazzy. Next week they take on La Trobe University. Next week they take on La Trobe University away for a chance to jump to 4th spot. Okay, so good work there.
Excellent.
Speaking of the women's team, it was great to see that fantastic presence in the regional championships for Geelong with 4 girls. Big congratulations to, I think there was 4 girls in 2 different age groups, so a total of 8 girls all up from North Geelong represented in the, I think it was 14s and the 17s. So well done to them all. The local teams.
I think we've got a photo of that one. There we go. There you go. So that's a great photo there.
Yeah, we can see there's Miros.
Janic is a girl.
Yeah, Anna's her name. Amanda Jakic. Who else? There's the 3rd scorer, Lena. So, I just can't see the faces clear enough. There's a Stasic in there. I think that's Zoe. Well done, girls. Good stuff. The local teams at North Geelong. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, we've got actually some footage, Josip, of some of the celebrations in the dressing room. So let's take a look at this. Yeah, this is. Oh, well done. Now, there's
Awesome.
about 3 generations or 2 or 3 generations there. There's mums with little girls and, there's all sorts there. That's just
It's great
wonderful
to
to
see, isn't
see.
it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Couple of
Congratulations to your daughter for her first senior goal. Well done,
Yeah,
Jasmine.
yeah, she's wrapped. She has been doing a little bit of self promotion on social media, so she can tone it down. When you get to midweek on the training week, you can tone it down because the next match is coming.
Yeah. Excellent, mate.
Uh,
Let's moving
yep.
along. We've got Strathmore Split. Is that right? Now, what happened
Yeah,
at Strathmore Split?
mate. This is a weird one, I think, and I listened into the Football Out West show. Look, the match got called off on Friday after the Rezzies had played on the other pitch, which was a worse
Mm.
condition than the main ground. I know during the week, Strathmore announced, tough conditions with the wet weather that was occurring in Victoria. But looks like the match officials didn't like it. They called it off as a bogged pitch. So their clash with top of the table Caroline Springs will go off to a catch-up round.
Hmm.
And instead, this week, they're going to have to set their sights on second place, Essendon Royals, who they had a real tight affair with last time. They had a draw with them. So I think that, look, the way Mickey's got the team playing, I'm looking forward to seeing a positive result for the Strathmore men. So good luck. The women's team, they played Moreland, had a 3-0 loss, and next week take on Diamond Valley. The Div2 Metro guys had a 4-1 loss to Altona City. But Tonci, relax.
Here we go.
Abate your fears. Sexy football is back.
I wonder if Ante Dragovic is listening to this show. If he is tuning,
Jason Belazinac, the Masters of Sexy Football, the Masters team, back to their best. 3-1 win over Northcote and sitting pretty on top of the table.
Can I just say, Josip, they are the self-proclaimed masters of sexy football. We haven't seen any footage yet. So, Ante, if you're listening, Dragovic, send us a little bit of footage of the boys in action next time around, and we'll believe you. We want to see some sexy split football.
I have had the privilege at sitting at Nick Delia's place with AD walking in the place, talking themselves up. But it's starting to become a little bit of lip service. We need a backup now.
Oh, nice work. Well done. We've got one Dragovic listening, and that's Steve Dragovic. Steve Dragovic, a good old buddy of mine from down at the Melbourne Knights days. Yeah, so keep the comments coming, gents. Keep the ladies, both, whatever. Keep the comments coming. We want to see as much interaction. And later on, when we do have our special guest speaker, Anthony KLARICA, psychologist and author of the book, The Performance Mindset, really, really want to see a lot of interaction from the comments section as well. So looking forward to that. Let's get back with the news. There's so much to get through.
Yeah, look, mate. Gorsuch Bears, the Masters had a 2-1 loss to Laverton. So a little bit of a dip in form there, but I'm sure they'll collect themselves again. And the Div 2 Metro team continue their winning ways, mate, with a massive 5-0 win over Juve. Vukovar defeated Melbourne Uni Angels 4-2, and NK Bunker, Vic Soccer at their best haven't updated the score, so I wouldn't have a clue who they played or what.
Come on, Bullkid, get your act together.
Over to the Apple Isle, mate. Look, Glenorchy men have had a dip in form of late, and it looks like it's continued. They had a 3-0 loss to South Hobart, dropping to third now. They're sort of about 6-7 points away from top place. They do face 6th place Clarence Zebras this week, so they'll have a chance to get themselves back on track. The women's team, the South Championship, lost 7-1 to Newtown, and South Championship 1 lost 5-0 to Newtown. So, girls, pull up your socks, dust it off, let's get on with it and get another win back on track. South Australia, mate. Let's go over to the wine country. Adelaide Raiders, the men. A dip in form for them too, unfortunately. A 3-1 loss to Port Adelaide. They're still sitting 5th place ahead of next week's game against first place Modbury Jets on Friday night away. And this will really test the guys. I know they're a young team coming together, and Phil Stubbins has got them, sort of refigured a little bit after their drop from MPL. But if you really want to test yourselves, you've got to test yourself against the best, and Modbury Jets is that at the moment. So good luck, Raiders. I know you got it in you. Let's get a win. And it's a bit of a local derby, that one too. Modbury's just up the road. The women's team at Adelaide, Croatia, 4-4 draw with Ingle Farm in 8th spot with a bye next week. Vukovi 4A, a 0-0 draw with Virginia, and 4B, a 1-0 loss to Virginia.
It's great to see that they've got two teams like what would they be, the veterans? Would they? Would that be the Masters or whatever?
It'd be like a
Like a
35 to
Soci.
45
Yeah.
sort of thing. Yeah.
And great to see in the Adelaide community that a lot of older gentlemen are still involved in the game from a
Yeah.
playing
Oh,
point of
look,
view.
every time I've been down to Jeff's Cross and seen the guys at the club there, there's always a good contingent of those guys born between sort of late 60s to even early 80s, and they're all involved. They all do their job, and they do a fantastic job of it too.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to take a very, very short break. When we return, it's part 2 of the Australian-Croatian soccer scene. Don't go away, folks. It is episode 21 of the Oz Cro Soccer Show. Welcome back to the Oz Cro Soccer Show. Josip, let's continue with the Australian-Croatian soccer review, and let's head over to WA.
I will in just a second, Tonci. I just got a prompt from one of our viewers who've reminded us that Melbourne, Croatia is also hosting a Zabava for Luya on the 6th of August. So I'm sure when you go down there on Friday night for the match, you'll get all the details there from Johnny Cash.
Yeah, absolutely.
WA, mate, Guelph unfortunately had a 1-0 loss to Coburn. It is pronounced Coburn, Tonci. They played
Is that the old Spearwood Dalmatinas, is it?
Yeah, it is the one that Dinamo played in the FFA Cup about 4 or 5 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
They play Balcatta this week, who's on bottom of the ladder. So that's actually they play catch up tonight from 9 p.m. I beg your pardon. So in about 10 minutes, we'll be able to start looking at score updates and give it to our viewers.
Now, Western United, Western United, Western Knights, they're going to have a supporters and sponsors lunch coming up. At the Coburn Surf Lifesaving Club. Just very quickly, there's some details there. Now, they've got some huge guest speakers. I don't know who this guy is, the Fremantle Dockers CEO, Simon Garlick. And I certainly don't know
he played for Footscray and Dockers.
Don't know. And I don't know who the head of member services, Alex Novatsis, is from Football West. But Dean Zlendich, the president of Western Knights, he's going to be a keynote speaker. They don't come any bigger than that. We had Dean on our program a few weeks ago, and you want to hear what Dean has to say. But all jokes aside, if you are in the Perth area, it's on Friday the 29th of July. It is a supporters and sponsors lunch. And it is being done by, I think, Andrea Juvela, and I think it's there's a whole group of them there at the Western Knights that are putting that together. Yeah. So if you're out in WA, make sure you get your head around it. Sorry, you'll interrupt.
No worries, mate. So the Guelph women, they did well. They had a 3-0 win over Subiaco. They take on Quins this week with 2 matches in hand and the right results. Tonch, they could move from 7th to 3rd in the space of 2 games.
How close is that?
Well done to the women who we once upon a time couldn't even get a result for. But thanks to people like Matt Jurcevic who've updated us, that's been great.
He's a legend, that guy.
Isn't he? He's just fantastic. Western Knights, as you said, they have the Sportsman's Night, but the Sportsman's Lunch, but they also had a good 4-2 win over Quins last round, and this time they're home to Joondalup with a chance to go second with still their match in hand. So look, they're still up there looking for that title, mate, so good on them. This week Virgin Airways announced cheap airfares to WA. Thanks to my cousin Miro Bicanic, who's sent me a flyer as well. It looks like they want us over, Tonch, with the Sportsman's Lunch coming up. Do you want to go?
Well, I tell you what, we could do a special show from WA. What do you reckon? That would be great.
Maybe. Over to Queensland, mates, over to the pointy end. Huge win for Gold Coast Knights last week. I was at the game, Tonci. Went down to 10 men just prior to the break, coming back from 1-0 down against Penn Power, who's, always top of the pops in the Queensland NPL. To take the game 2-1 over Penn Power. There's really inspirational stuff. Christian Brimora, he isn't what you call your typical centre forward. He's a running machine. He scored this goal with about a minute and a half left where he took on two players, crunched them, like footy, almost AFL style. The ball spills out on the left wing, cuts in on the top of the box, and he hit it, took a deflection, and it just sailed over it kind of like chipped over the keeper in the back corner. And the crowd, as you can see up there on the grandstand where the players are gathering in that photo, just absolutely went nuts. So well done.
Brilliant stuff.
They want to be at their best. They take on Queensland Lions this week, who are top of the pops, mate. So and they better be at their best. My father-in-law's in town this week, and if you want to make someone happy for their visit to Gold Coast, you get him the 3 points for his visit.
There's no Charlotte when the pool nuts comes to town. No.
Yep. And a bit of festa too. Well, we had it. Come on.
Absolutely.
Look, additionally, the QPL 4 guys, the local team, they had a big 5-1 win over Broadbeach, which is a turnaround from their first encounter where they lost 3-2. They are on fire. Mark Vidakovic, or Sharky as is colloquially known here, brother of Betislav, he has primed them up big time. Brisbane Knights women's team had a big 6-2 win over Teviot Downs, top of the table for the ladies, with the game in hand. Well done. The men were up against Mogul and suffered a loss, both the first and second team, 3-0. Seventh place Knights take on top team New Farm this week. So time to get really ready for this one, guys, and get yourselves back to winning form. Over to New South Wales, Sydney United men. Well, we'll have Sydney United coach and captain on next week. I hope it's not too early to announce, George, but I think it's fair enough. Miro and Adrian Vlastelica will be joining us next week, and we look forward to catching up with them after their good win in the FFA Cup. But unfortunately, in their league in the NPL, they went down 1-0 to Blacktown. So, look, they're through now. They'll be playing a mouthwatering contest with none other than Bonnyrigg White Eagles, with the date yet to be confirmed. I haven't seen the date just yet.
No, I haven't either. If anyone knows, and anyone is in the chat, let us know if you guys know when Sydney United are taking on the old foe from Bonnyrigg, the old rivals.
The old enemy. The women's team, who play under the umbrella of Sydney United, but are the Endenzel Park women, who in the M League, they had a 2-0 loss to Escol Park and faced Tamor this week. Over to Hurstville, a rare loss here for Hurstville Zagreb, Tonci. The second place Zagreb.
Going on?
Second place Zagreb going down 2-1 to Western Rage at home. And that's the unusual part. They're at home, which has really been a fortress for them this year. They will look to turn that around quickly with an away game to Hawkesbury this weekend. South Coast United, special call out to Ivo Spanicek, who sent us some visuals on this as well. So thank you, Ivo. Keep it coming, mate. Going down 3-0 to Wollongong United away. Next week, the big contest. They got the old foe to play against too, mate. They're playing Albion Park White Eagles away. The bottom placed United have a chance to pick themselves up. But also, Ivo's given me a bit of a rundown that now with the transfer window open again, they'll be looking to add some players to the roster to help them make a big push up the ladder. So we'll look forward to seeing those results turn in their favour.
Yeah.
Yep. Newcastle. The Div 3, speaking of rare losses from Hurstville as well, Newcastle had a rare loss. They had a first v second match in their Division 3 comp, going down to probably which is their closest rival. And even back in the day when I lived there, that was the closest rival too. 1-0 to Azuri, which is nothing to be too ashamed of. They'll pick themselves up quickly as they turn around to play Nelson Bay this week. Bellbird, sorry. The All Age are playing Nelson Bay, and the All Age continue their winning ways with a 3-1 win over Charlestown. Willoughby Delhies, Dalmatia Sydney, as they're sometimes known as, they had a 1-1 draw with Barrera. The second place Delhies next week take on North Sydney. Over to the nation's capital to wrap things up, Tonci.
Canberra.
Yeah, Canberra, Croatia. Their women's powerhouse team just keep powering along, mate. 8-0 winners over Tuggeranong. Top of the table. No one can touch these these ladies. They're the hottest property in football for women's football at the minute. The men's team, just like their women counterparts, remain top of the table, but they had a close encounter with Monaro Panthers, coming away 1-0 winners. O'Connor Knights had a 3-2 win over Cooma Tigers in a hard-fought battle. They stay in the top 4, and their women's team in D5 local Canberra comp, second placed women, play Western Molonglo this weekend after a 5-2 win. And before I wrap things up, Tonch, one thing I'd like to say is thank you for all the clubs who post a lot of information about their progress scores and things like that. The federations do let us down at times with their consistency or inconsistency, should I say. But there are still some clubs who could just do a little bit more about covering their women's team or junior special highlights and things like that. So I'm not here to finger point at anyone in particular or any club in particular, but I think it's in this day and age in 2022, if you ask a parent or a teammate or something like that, they'd be happy to share a photo with a bit of a score update, and it can go up there. Even fans can do it themselves. You can post to your club's social media page, and it just makes for fantastic reading, and it's nice to keep up to date as we do here each week. We try and keep abreast of everything that's going on in the community.
Absolutely, it's about brand awareness of your club, but also you're reconnecting with probably people that haven't been at your club for a long time, and they just may well come back after seeing something coming across their newsfeed and whatnot. So, well said there, Josip. Good on you. Guys, we're going to take a very, very quick break. When we return, it's the Croatian scene in Croatia. Very short this week, but we've got some great footage of the great man, the V-Bomber. A little excerpt from an interview that he held, just over in the last 24 hours on Croatian television. Don't go away, folks. We'll be back very, very shortly with the Oz Cro Soccer Show. Welcome back to the Oz Cro Soccer Show and the Geelong Region Soccer Show next Monday night from 8 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time will feature our very own North Geelong Croatia, North Geelong Warriors. They will be the club in focus. Now, let's turn our attention to Croatia. There's 2 big signings just been announced in the last couple of days. First of all, Hajduk have signed this 25-year-old Slavonac. He's from Slavonski Brod originally. 194 centimeters tall, which is probably about as tall as me. And his name's Toni Borevkovic, and he is a centre-back. Now, Hajduk have really needed a centre-back because they've lost some key centre-backs now, Ferro and Kartic as well. Has gone back to Glasgow Rangers. So he signed, but in the last, maybe 24 hours or so, Dinamo have come back and signed their second most expensive import or signing, if you like, Boško Šutalo, 22-year-old. He's come from the Italian scene, from where I think is at Verona, if I'm not mistaken. He's 22 years of age. He was born in Metkovic, and he's set to replace another Šutalo, Josip Šutalo, also 22 years of age. Now, both of these started at NK Neretva Metkovic in their juniors, but no relation. Josip Šutalo, he was born in Čapljina, just over the border in Bosnia-Herzegovina. And the interesting thing is Šutalo was a revelation in the recent European Nations Cup, and he's probably set to be recruited abroad. So this is a direct replacement. You've got a Šutalo for a Šutalo. Now, that's not the only Neretvanin at Dinamo Zagreb. Bruno Petkovic, another high-profile Metkovac I'm saying so proudly, my parents are from Metkovic, so Dinamo Zagreb, they just could not I think, live without the Neretvani, the Dalmatinci there. But it augurs well for an awesome season next year, Josip. There's been lots of frenetic activity as the transfer window has just started opening up. A lot of speculation. But it just means that the Croatian league is going to be even more exciting next season than it was this year. So that's a great thing to have.
It would really be one to watch next year with the reformation of the leagues as two, in terms of the way the Div 2s and 3s are happening as well. But Tonci, more importantly, are you telling me that there's two Herzegovci, the name Šutalo, that are not related?
One Herzegovec, one Dalmatina, separated by a border. For those of you from Metkovic, and there's quite a few, Stipe Dragovic is one who's on the chat lines at the moment. I'm sure there's a few others as well. It's a very, very small place, and there's a lot of people that share the same name that intermarry and what you're not, and they're not related, or so they say, or maybe they're like seventh cousins or something down the track. But I think most parts of Croatia can sort of can agree with that. Now, mate, over the last 24 hours, Mark Viduka, the great V-bomber, he doesn't have many interviews, and he's come out and had this 45-minute perler of an interview on a talk show called Dudo I Prijatelji, hosted by one Dubravko Šimenc, who is a former world-class water polo player for Croatia. It's on Laudato TV, Laudato Televizija, and the difference about this television channel compared to, I guess, the mainstream channels, it's a Christian channel, it's a Catholic channel, and they're a lot more, let's say, domoljubni than a lot of the state-run TV channels. But we've got some footage of when. Oh, and who can not forget this game? I mean, me being a Vatreni Hajdukovac, it was one of my favourite Dinamo games ever when Dinamo beat Partizan Belgrade 5-0 in Zagreb. I think it was 97 or 98 or something like that. Listen to what the Viduks has to say. Now, word of warning, it is in Croatian, so if your Croatian understanding is not very good, you've got one of two options. You can either go on the YouTube channel and maybe click on the subtitles, or good idea would be to start learning Croatian. Yeah. Sit back and enjoy. Yeah, absolutely, we will. It goes only for about a minute and a half, but listen for the reference he makes about the baba. All right, that's all I'm going to say.
Ja nikad neću zaboraviti onu utakmicu protiv Partizana u Maksimiru. Ne znam da li je to tebi možda jedna od najdražih utakmica. Igrao si ih jako puno, ja to znam.
Kako ne?
Ali
takva utakmica, mislim, ja osobno mislim da se ne može tako nešto ponoviti više. Zbog cijele situacije, rat, prva utakmica nakon rata između nogometnih klubova, je li tako bilo?
Da.
Kvalifikacije za Champions lige, još idemo tamo i izgubimo, stvarno smo zaslužili nešto dobiti od te utakmice. I izgubili smo tu utakmicu i dođemo, jer stvarno, ti znaš kako je to kad igraš utakmice, veliki je to pritisak. Prvo koliko pritisak stavljaš na sebe, a drugo okolina, ne?
Da, publika, navijači.
Pa da, pa ja sjećam, babe bi nam dolazili na ulici i govorili kao morate dobiti, izgubila sam sve u ratu ili šta ja znam. I to je stvarno, svi smo bili smo velika utakmica bila za nas. Ja znam, 2 tjedna nisam spavao, stvarno prije te utakmice. I onda samo jedva čekaš da izađeš, da izbaciš nervozu.
That's Mark Viduka. Now, in a nutshell, basically it says, before the big game against Partizan, it was, he couldn't sleep for 2 weeks. And everyone, it meant so much to everyone that little grannies were coming up to him in the street and saying, you must beat Partizan. You have to beat. I lost everything in the war and you've got to do it for us. So could you imagine? I mean, he was, a 19, 20-year-old, or at the time he was probably about 21 years of age. Yeah. So the amount of pressure, the pressure cooker cauldron in a small city like Zagreb, which has barely 1 million people, and back then probably had 900,000 people. You could imagine, but a great interview, and he's just so down to earth, and it's just.
There's a story to that game that I wish someone would ask him the question to, and I got the snippet that coming out of the players' race in that game, that Mark went all beast mode. And as the Partizan players were lining up He's come out and just gone, ah!
It's
really try and strike fear into him. And look what it did, though. What they win 5-0, 6-0, what it was.
5-0, 5-0, yeah.
Silvio Matic had the game of his life and got recruited to Newcastle after that. Yeah.
It was a golden generation in many, many ways. Okay. We're going to take a very, very short break. When we do return, folks, it's time for our guest tonight, our special guest tonight, Anthony Clarica, the author of The Performance Mindset. And you talk about getting Viduka getting into a certain mindset, a real kind of beast mode, as you say. I can't wait to talk to Anthony about the mindset that an elite performer, an elite sports person requires to be at the top of their game. Folks, that's coming up straight after this little break. Don't go away. It's the Oz Cro Soccer Show, episode 21.
Are you one of those people that just pays their business insurance each year? Insurance is the last thing we want to worry about when running our business day to day. Unless there is a claim that needs to be made, right? And once we have our insurance in place, we just keep renewing it. We just find it too hard to shop around. Does that sound like you? Well, at Your Business Insurance, we could save you money and get you a better deal. We'll review your current insurance and determine if you're getting the most favourable offers from the insurance market. Call Your Business Insurance on 1300 767 456.
Welcome back to the Oz Cro Soccer Show. Before we get to our main guest, it's only our first season. We've only been gone 21 episodes, so things have been slowly building up, and it's great to know that just before the show tonight we hit 100 subscribers on our YouTube channel. Well, these next 7 days we'd like to double that. We'd like to get double the amount of subscribers. And speaking of our YouTube channel, Josip, if you've missed something, go back to our YouTube channel. And that's where I think a lot of people do watch the replay of the show. But those that are watching live, you've got a very, very big advantage over those that are going to be tuning in later on. And we understand it is 9 o'clock. It's past 9 o'clock. So a lot of the kiddies are gone to bed, or people who have to get up early tomorrow. But get your pens and papers out, take heaps of notes, and that's all I'm going to say, because it's time to bring our special guest on. He's the author of this brilliant book called The Performance Mindset. There we go. 7 Steps to Success. And he's the acclaimed psychologist from Melbourne. He reveals the lessons of high-performing athletes and shows how you can build strategies to apply for greater success in sport, business, or in your personal life. Absolute pleasure to welcome to the show from Melbourne, Anthony Clarica. Anthony, how are you? And thank you for being part of the Oz Cro Soccer Show.
Tonci, Josip, thanks very much for having me. It's great to be here. Great to hear stories too.
Yeah, absolutely.
We have
now, now, mate. It's first of all, congratulations on the book. It's only two weeks old or something like that, and I'm led to believe it's your first ever book. Correct?
That's the first book. That's right. Yeah, just in bookstores last week, Tonci. So sales are going well. Been some good feedback.
Watch after tonight. They're going to go absolutely nuts. You might have to do a reprint. Mate, speaking of the book, where did you get the inspiration for the book? 30 years, I guess you've been a psychologist, so you've come across lots and lots of inspirational people, but what really inspired you to get together and get all those stories together and put together a book?
Yeah, there was two main areas of inspiration. The one was because I'm really lucky in my job. I get to see. I've been in Bathurst, in Pit Lane. I've been to Olympic Games in the stadiums and with the athletes. I've been AFL Grand Final and Grand Slams in tennis. So I get to see behind the scenes. Everyone else just gets to see on the surface. And so I thought it was really important, and people would like to see what actually goes on behind the scenes and how these athletes get there, what they do to manage it. That was one inspiration. And the other inspiration was the area that I work in, the mind and mindset. It's becoming more popular than ever now, I think, Tonci. And I wanted to share some strategies that I've worked with lots of these people. They go to the top of the tree, it's an Olympic medal or whatever it is. They don't just get there by accident. They get there by doing specific things that really help them get there. They do them for not just 1 week or 1 month or 1 year, but they build those strategies over lots of years. And I wanted to share those strategies so people could use them.
Well, yeah, thank you for that, Anthony. It's exactly what I think a lot of athletes need in today's day and age, with many different pressures coming in their life. And a couple of aspects that I picked up on myself was that exploring the factors that influence the mindset. So you talk about environmental, social, and personal, and also on top of that, recording your strengths. I thought that particular part, before you expand on it, that particular part for me, having coached boys between the ages of 14 and 16 throughout my life, I think, how would that happen? Because I think about the mindsets that I've worked with, and I think it's often like seeing when you start writing things about yourself, the boys can come down on themselves a bit about that. But I'd love to hear a bit more about that, and that exploring the mindset from the environment, social, and personal aspects.
Yeah, good question, Josip. I'm really big on strengths. I'll talk about that in a second. The reason I in the introduction I spoke about the holistic mindset, not just putting all the pressure on the individual or the person, right? Because that's what we think mindset is: build how you think and how you feel and all this sort of thing. That is a part of it. That's the personal part of it. How what you develop and bring yourself. But you've got to understand, good athletes, they manage the environment around them. You know, there's luck, there's opportunities, there's resources, there's coaching structures, which club you go to, the culture of the club you're in, all the how you manage that environment around you. Good athletes manage that environment well, and if it's not working, they'll shift the environment.
Yeah.
And that's really important. That's why culture is so important.
Yeah.
And then the social part is how you use support structures. How do you use your coaches? How do you use a mentor? How do you handle things? How do you grow? What do you read? What are you watching? All those social dynamics that happen, they help build a person as well. So we need to understand that it's not just to put all the pressure on a single person. You got to build holistically, which includes environment, social, and the person.
Yeah.
So I guess that goes hand in hand with what they say about you're the product of your environment, and if you know those that really stand out from the pack, as you said, they create their environment for them, which is going to be optimum for whatever their performance, whether it's sports, whether it's business, whether it's their personal lives, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's interesting because that's sort of the penny drop for me when I read something about that, and that's a really interesting piece. Yeah.
Well, Tonci, on that one, I say that it's important not to be a recipient. You've got to be a participant.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of athletes, they're just recipients. They take on information, and then, it's good to be a sponge, sure, but you need to be more than a recipient. You need to be a participant in your own development. And the best athletes do that really well. Yeah. And I get them to challenge their coaches. I get them to use their environment, use their resources, maximize their decision making, build a support network. That's what they do well.
And speaking of being a participant, just onto that recording part, recording your strengths.
Yeah.
Give us a little bit about that. What's the ideology behind that?
Sure. Well, there's a wave the last 5 to 10 years called positive psychology. And what positive psychology is about, and how I've translated that into sport, is sport focuses on weaknesses a lot. You know, when you go coaching, we've got to work on this. We've got to work on your left foot. We've got to work on our corners. We've got to work on this. We're not good at this. You lose, then all week the training is we've got to fix what we did bad in the game, right? It's a trap. Everybody's there for a reason. They're good at something. If I was in control of a program, I would have a certain amount of time every session. Whatever you're good at, that's what you train first, because that's what's going to help you grow the most. Your weaknesses, they'll develop over time, but might be your right foot strike, it might be your touch, it might be your positioning, it might be your mental strength, not just something technical. It might be your endurance, which means that you have to run hard. So it's a whole range of things that strengths aren't just about necessarily just technical. It could be, as I said, endurance. It could be speed work.
Yeah.
If you got a player who's good with speed, get them just to use their speed all the time. So that's what you got to start with. The other thing about strengths, Josip, is if you just work on weaknesses, then overall you're going to feel a bit flat.
Yeah.
If you work on your strengths, your weaknesses will grow much more easily because you'll feel better about yourself.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it. I think because a lot of the times, not only the players, but also coaches who are fixed on problem solving, right? And often, especially in soccer, football, you come to a session and you're talking about the football problem that occurred. We can't get the ball out of here. We're not finishing our chances. And I think coaches could learn a lot out of that, what you're bringing to the table here, Anthony, about spinning it in a way where, as you alluded to before, let's work on our strengths first and see if those problems can be identified as we continue to work on what's really good for us. A prime example is Jurgen Klopp. Before he got the defence that he's got right now, he had a shocking defence, but all he had was all-out attack. So he was trying to score more than he copped.
Yeah. Perfect strategy. Perfect. The other thing about strengths is if you start looking for strengths in yourself, you'll notice them in your teammates. And it's a team sport. So if you're going to work together, if you're going to work together, you need to notice other people's strengths. You need to bring out the strengths in everybody in the team. And if you think of any team, if every single player just played even 80% of their strengths or 90% of their capacity, you'll probably be hard to beat. So
interesting. That's an interesting take.
Train yourself to see and use your strengths, but also train yourself to look at your strengths in your teammates and then encourage and build those strengths out of them.
Josip, I don't know about you, but I'm sort of now got my coach's cap on, and I coach my little boys under 12s. And I'm thinking to myself, especially, those kids at those formative years or they're those changing years, they're very sensitive and these days, they adapt a lot better to that positive reinforcement and what you're not, but also their strength. Conversely, though, Anthony, then kind of take it one step. If it's a team environment, for example, we're talking soccer here. You're focusing on the strengths of your team, but then are you looking at maybe weaknesses of the other team and exploiting that with your team's strengths?
I think that happens automatically, Tonci. I think for juniors, we'll talk about juniors first, then we'll talk about senior professional players. It's a bit different because you've got to know your opposition. But for juniors, to be honest, to think about the opposition weaknesses, that's hard. It's hard enough to focus on your game plus your team game. And then you got to add a layer of thinking about the opposition. I think for juniors, that's a bit much. If you get all the juniors just to use their strengths, and as I said, encourage each other in the team to bring their strengths, that's going to keep them in the sport too. And by the way, this doesn't mean that we're soft. It doesn't mean, kids are not resilient. We've got to think about their strengths. They can't hear their weaknesses. That's not true. It actually makes you more resilient and more tough to think about your strengths. And you know what? A lot of kids, I run a workshop with some top athletes. I get them sitting in front of each other. I say, tell me 3 strengths you've got. No one puts their hand up. They're too embarrassed. They're too shy.
Yeah.
They don't want to talk about their strengths. But you go and get an interview with the club overseas or an A-League club. First thing the coach is going to say to you, why are you here? What can you do for us? You're getting recruited for your strengths. Yeah. So people are often too modest, and the more you work on your strengths, the easier and the more you can attack your weaknesses as well.
It's I'm really enjoying this, Tonci. But I'm just starting to think a little bit broader here. Having been part of the NPL coaching system for some years, those knockbacks that kids get in their trials, or whether or not they get a little bit disillusioned with the pathway if they're already in it, or even injuries in those setbacks. Do you think that strength recognition or that positive reinforcement can help the athlete and the person get over it, or is there something else they could be considering of?
Yeah, it's a good question. Coming back from injury or coming back from bad form, you really need to be sharp because coming back from an injury, you've just got to get over your body. sometimes that's a bit easier than coming back from bad form, because you've got to overcome all the negatives and probably the feedback that you've been given that you've got to accept to grow. So to deal with those things, you've got to think about the bigger picture. Where am I going? What have I been doing well? And you've got to actually make it more simple. If people are coming back from bad form, then it's too easy for them to make it complicated.
Yeah.
I think as coaches and athletes as well, they actually have to think more about when they're coming back from an injury or coming back from bad form, they actually have to think about simplifying the game, because it's very easy to complicate the game in your head. And what psychology does, a lot of people think psychology makes things complicated, right?
Mm-hmm.
But good psychology and good sports psychology actually makes it more simple. That's what good mental skills, good mindset is. I work with a lot of athletes, and gee, they're coming back from injury, they're coming back from bad form. They make the game very complicated. And you've got to say to them, keep it simple.
Yeah.
So on.
Just
in the sense, how do they make it complicated? Like, do they make the their own kind of return, their own sort of aspect complicated, or the return to the actual game, or to the return to the actual standard that they're used to? Well, what exactly have you found in your experience they make complicated?
Probably worries, Tonci. You know, they worry, what's my form going to be like? You know, what's my body going to be like? I haven't played for a while. What's the coach going to think? How am I going to settle back in the team? You know, are we going to win or lose? Am I starting on the pitch? Am I off the pitch? What's going to happen next week? And there you go. That's too complicated.
And a lot of that, Anthony, starts to leach into anxiety, nervousness, sort of limited beliefs in yourself.
Yep. Josip, I like to separate those two things. You know, anxiety and nerves. Then they're not just related to limited belief.
Okay. Yep.
They're quite separate.
Yep.
A lot of people that have got strong belief can still get nervous and anxious.
Okay.
Now, the thing about nerves and anxiety, they're quite common, and they can either sneak up on you slowly, and I call anxiety very sneaky, because sometimes you say to people, geez, why didn't you play well? They go, I don't know. They say, I got anxious. Why did you get anxious? I don't know. So anxiety is very sneaky. It can catch you. So it can either sneak up on you over 1 or 2 weeks. You can be nervous before a game, or maybe you're not nervous, and then all of a sudden you get nervous real quickly. So I talk about that in the book, actually, with a couple of athletes, tell stories of they were leading a big match, and then all of a sudden they get anxious. So anxiety can come out in a couple of different ways. It can affect you physically, your coordination, your heart rate, your stamina, even your footwork and skills. Anxiety can affect that, or it can affect your thinking. You go blank, your decision making, or your determination. So sometimes coaches have to remember that if they're seeing a drop in those things, it could be anxiety, it could be thinking anxiety, or it could be physical anxiety. And we've got to make sure that we recognize the difference between the two, because then that helps you work out what you need to deal to attack which one.
Okay.
Now, mate, when we're talking to coaches of female teams, female soccer teams, it tends to be a lot of males. We're still, I think, female football here in this country hasn't developed to that extent that there are a lot of female coaches. There's still a lot of dads or, male coaches that seem to occupy that domain. And it's funny, when we talk to some of these coaches, we ask them, when you approach coaching a male team compared to a female team, is there a difference in the way you coach? Some say, no, I coach the same way as I do this and that. Others say, yeah, definitely, you've got to take this into account. You've got to take that into account. The best one is when they say the big difference between coaching girls and boys is that girls actually listen to you. The boys don't. But in your experience, do you find the approach from, say, female and male athletes different in their willingness to adopt, and then when they do their practice of it?
No, Tonci, I don't. I've worked with, for example, the AFL women's team, which is a really big season. The first season, I worked with Carlton with the women's team, and that actually, I know it's away from soccer, but that Collingwood game, that first AFLW game was massive. And we watched the Matildas, and they're amazing as well. So I don't really. There's some. If you think of just male teams across the board, there's a big difference with some men's teams and other men's teams.
Yep.
Right, and with some women's teams, there's a very big difference with some women's teams compared to other women's teams.
Yep.
So if you think about it like that, you go, well, okay, that's true. Some women's teams will be a little bit more like the men's, and some men's will be a little bit more like the women's. I think factors that you need. I think good coaching, like top shelf coaching, covers it well. The key areas that you need to be thinking of are communication. It's very, like, you've had some coaches feedback about, the women listen a little bit more. I think focusing on communication and teamwork. I think women, as a general rule, are very invested in the whole team, and I think that's not a gender thing. I think that's because it's fairly new. Men's soccer's been around for 100 years.
Yeah,
and women have not had the privilege or the opportunity, which is not right. Thankfully, now they do, to have that long in the sport. And so I think women have a real great investment, and so they should, to grow the game. And it's fantastic that, women's football is growing so fast. It's fantastic. So I think not to say they're more or less invested, but there's a different purpose sometimes there. Yeah, but I think top shelf coaching covers it all. Communication, teamwork, mental skills are very important to coach to both men's and women's.
We're speaking with Anthony Clarita, the author of his first book, The Performance Mindset, 7 Steps to Success in Sport and Life. Anthony, we're going to take a short break. When we return, we'll discuss those 7 steps from the actual book. We'll look at some of the case studies, and in particular one soccer-related one, which I think a lot of Australian Croatian football fans, particularly those in Melbourne, will know very, very well. I'm really looking forward to this, and there's going to be a special, which we'll mention a little bit later on after the break. But let's go to that break. When we return, part 2 of this riveting discussion with Anthony Clarita. Don't go away, folks. Welcome back to the Oz Cro Soccer Show. This is a really interesting discussion. We're talking about the performance mindset. There it is, 7 steps to success in sport and life. And we're talking with the author, Anthony Clarita. Anthony, we've talked about so many things, but all of these things we talk about elite athletes, but they could be very well used in everyday life, in business, in personal life. So I'm finding this really interesting. But let's bring it to the soccer. Let's bring it to football. Now, one of the people that you interview in this book, and it's a fantastic book, is Sasha Ognjanovski, former Dandenong City coach, Dandenong City Hajduk coach, and he was also Melbourne, who was at the Melbourne Knights in the old National Soccer League. Now, the thing about Sasha, he said in the book, he says, I was not the most talented at all. I knew others were faster or stronger and technically better, but I had a driven mindset. I'm going to read this little excerpt out. My goal was to be better than others mindset-wise and never to break mentally at crucial moments. That's what allowed me to achieve more than others who were more talented. I was willing to push more and do more than others. From when I was young, I always told myself, no one is superhuman. This is profound stuff. Yeah. My opponent might be a better footballer, but with my mentality, I thought I could beat anyone. I focused on my strengths and treated every game as a battle. Now, it was in his early 30s that he became a Socceroo. He carved out a career overseas, I think in Korea and Japan, was it? Yeah. And look, he left school at 15 to become a carpenter, but was always focused on pursuing and forging a professional sports career. And it says here, now this is what I found really interesting. Even if after he was selected for the national team, the Socceroos, Sasha would do an extra 30 minutes of his own drills after training sessions. Because I remember being in Japan with the national team and kicking left foot, right foot against the wall for 30 minutes. Now, that's amazing. That mindset. it's almost like you have to be obsessed to be the best, and nothing else will stand in your way. I get goosebumps thinking about this, but it's just incredible the power of the mind, isn't it?
It sure is, Tonci. You know, for the book, I shared my experience from 30 years, but I decided to interview quite a lot of people. I interviewed, in the end, 17 different people, and I'm really happy that I interviewed Sasha, because there's some of the things that he told me that you just shared that are in the book. It was amazing. And yeah, he told me the story how he was in Japan, and after a match, instead of cooling down, he went and did extra 30 minutes, left foot, right foot. I don't think it's obsession, to be honest. I just think that's focus. That's what you do. That's what you do. But it comes back to the strengths thing too, doesn't it, Josip? Because he recognized he wasn't talented. So his goals, because everyone thinks I've got this goal, I've got that goal, I've got this goal. His goal was to build his mindset.
Yep.
It's a different goal than what people usually think.
Yeah.
And that's why he ended up becoming a Socceroo. Now, you know that motto that he had from when he was younger, nobody is superhuman.
Yeah.
He told me, and it's in the book, his first game for Australia, he debuted against Egypt, against one of the top players in the world. And was he anxious? No. Was he nervous? No. Was he ready? Yes. I said to him, why? He said, I just used the same thinking that I'd already been using for 10 years. So it's easy for me to be ready.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a really good example of why it's so important to build your mindset from a young age. And he had a great game. Everyone was going, oh my God, where's this guy come from? And he's just thinking, this is what I've been doing. I should be here. So he felt like he belonged straight away. And I think that's an amazing story for a lot of people in football and in other sports too.
Now, folks, we're going to be giving away one copy of the Performance Mindset. Thanks very much to Anthony. Take some notes. There'll be a question at the end, and then you'll be given instructions. So make sure you take some notes. But Anthony, we're going to have a look at those 7 different steps, and let's start off with the very, very first one. Harness motivation.
Gee, that's impressive. It just come up on the screen. Well done. Yeah, motivation. Now, look, I did put these in order deliberately. Motivation is so important because when you're a junior athlete transitioning to open sport, it's very hard to keep your motivation. And we see a lot of drop off from junior to professional or open sport because you get a lot of setbacks. When you're a junior, you're the top of the tree. And then you go and travel somewhere and all of a sudden you're the bottom. It's like being grade 6. You're the king of the school, and then all of a sudden you're in year 7 playing with the year 12s. So transition, it's difficult to keep motivation then. And a couple of things I talk about in the motivation chapter is, a couple of them are, first of all, everybody thinks elite athletes are all intrinsically driven. They just drive themselves every day. That's not true. I talk about how important it is to balance intrinsic motivation with extrinsic. You got to know when your motivation drops, what around you helps keep you motivated. Is it watching a video? Is it talking to a coach? Is it remembering your strengths? Is it looking back at a good game? Is it looking at your goals? Is it talking to someone who gives you positive feedback? Is it giving yourself a challenge? You've got to balance your intrinsic and your extrinsic motivators to keep your motivation going long term. Otherwise, it's too hard. So that's something I talk about. And of course, everyone talks about setting goals as well. Everyone talks about it, but not a lot of people know how to do it very well. I tell a quick story, not a soccer one, but I interviewed Dean Boxall, who was the coach of Ariane Titmus, who won the gold medal at the Olympics, and she beat Katie Ledecky, who was unbelievable. And I said to him, I thought he would have set goals, and I said to him, did you set a goal for Ariane Titmus to beat Katie Ledecky at the Olympics? And he said she was so far off. 4 years before the Olympics, she was so far away. I thought it would be crazy to even set a goal. I didn't set a goal. All as I said to her was, look, here's a benchmark we need to work at. We need to work our guts out at this, and this. Don't worry about Katie Ledecky. Don't worry about the Olympics. You know, you're not good enough at the moment. She's better than you. And then it wasn't until they got close to the Olympics when she improved a lot, they said, hey, we might be a chance to, now we can set a goal. So how you use goal setting and how you use intrinsic, extrinsic drivers to help your motivation, that's part of chapter 1.
Brilliant. Well, that probably leads us to the next phase then, Anthony, and boost resilience.
Yeah, boost your resilience. Look, there's a couple of things in resilience, right? If you want to be resilient, you've got to break it down to smaller parts. For too many people, if they feel like one thing's not working, they feel like everything's not working. Well, that's just rubbish. If one thing in your game's not working, it doesn't mean other things in your game are not working, right? If one thing in the team's not working, other things in the team are still working. So if you want to be resilient, break it down to smaller parts. The other thing is, and I'll tell you a story about Sasha with his resilience in a minute, but the other thing with resilience is you've got to create opportunities for people to succeed. Everybody thinks that resilience just comes from give them a challenge, give them a challenge, give them a challenge. That can help resilience, but it can break you down. You've got to bring this learning mindset. A learning mindset helps you be resilient because you don't look at it as failure. You reinterpret it as a chance to grow. That's really important for people. If you just think that you're failing, it's no good. So you got to, when you're coaching, you got to create opportunities for success. I said to a coach the other day, he said, I'm really annoyed. You know, the athletes, I gave them 15 200s and they couldn't make it and they're all feeling bad. I go, mate, that's fine once a month or once every few months, but you got to give them sessions where they feel good, where they can achieve and meet the, you got to give them where they can push themselves, but just meet the challenge. And Sasha, his resilience story in that chapter, it's amazing. He paid for himself to trial in Japan, in Asia, Turkey, all over the world. And finally, he trialed in Greece. He had 250 euros in his pocket just to get to the club for the trial. It cost him $248 to get from the euros to get from the airport to the trial. He had €2 left. He trialed. And finally, they said, 4-year contract. He's in heaven. He thinks he's in heaven, right?
Yeah.
After a couple of months, the club went bankrupt. He didn't get paid a cent.
Oh, jeez.
He had to come home and he missed the cutoff date for going back into the national competition. So he had to go back to being a carpenter and played local. So he's gone from playing European high-level football, 4-year contract, to local football. And I said to him, how did you handle it? And he said, it just made me stronger because every experience I had, good or bad, made me open my mind up for how to be smarter.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. Well, that goes then hand in hand with step number 3 in sharpening your focus, and especially at times when it's very difficult to focus on the task and focus on your goals, and you may receive setbacks and that sort of stuff. With regards to focus, you hear coaches always yelling out, focus, focus, whether it's under sevens or whether it's seniors, whether it's amateurs or elite. But what makes the difference as far as sharpening that focus with the elite athlete? What's the big difference there?
Yeah, a couple of things. One is there's so many distractions. Those distractions could come from yourself in your own head, or they could come from anything around you, right? So you've got to manage distractions. And one of the best ways to do that is to use self-talk. And a lot of good athletes, they plan this self-talk well ahead of the match. They actually even use it in training. So when they get to the match, like Sasha with No One Superhuman, he had that self-talk, that motto for years. So when you got to a match, it was easy to remember it. So you build your self-talk, and whatever that self-talk is, you got to work it out for yourself, and you build your brand, then you focus on that. And that self-talk becomes really important. The other thing that's important with focus is to look at the difference between what you've got to do. I'll call that an assessment focus where you get really broad, or a narrow focus where you just got to act right then and there. You got to do something. And too many players sometimes, they're thinking about what do I got to do? How am I going? When they should be thinking narrow, I've got to get on this ball fast. I've got to hit it clean I've got to look down there to my teammate. So you got to be narrow, and sometimes you've got to be broad when the ball's up the other end. You can't mix up the two.
Does any of that focus, like you often see players coming out of team buses with, the JBLs or the Sennheisers on their heads, and is that part of the focus thing too? Like a bit of remove other distraction?
Definitely, it's a lot of players. You know what? I'll tell you something. There's quite a few players that got the headphones on. There's no music. It's just a strategy so no one talks to them.
Yeah.
I've seen that in big stadiums. But yes, they'll use the music to help reduce distractions, help them relax as well.
Yep.
But part of that relaxation is to manage their arousal level, because you don't want to get too pumped. You don't want to get too calm. Or if you're like Mark Viduka in that story you told before, Tonci, he needed to be pumped. He was pumped for that game. So you got to work out what's good for you. Do you need to be more pumped? Do you need to be more calm? But then you need to be really good at managing that, because a game will take you away from that. A game will sometimes relax you. A game will pump you, or a coach might pump you up when you need to be relaxed.
Yeah.
So you part of focus and the headphones and other things, you need to manage that yourself.
It's funny that I in a previous life, I used to work at the Croatian Herald, in the newspaper, the Vjesnik in Melbourne, and you used to speak to a lot of the elite footballers, mainly soccer players, but we used to do a lot of interviews with a lot of other sportsmen as well. And it was interesting with regards to music. There were some that used to say, I listen to a certain type of music. It could be anything, whatever the case may be, and not always heavy metal. People always think heavy metal pumps you up and this and that. Some of them used to listen to Croatian klape or ballads or opera, whatever. And I remember asking one particular, it was a footballer, and I said, "Do you really enjoy that music?" He goes, "No, that just pumps me up. I hate it. I actually can't stand it." But that was his little instrument that he used whatever to get him into a certain frame of mind or whatever that he needed to perform. That interesting. That's fascinating.
Yeah. Some people will use calming music. Some people use pump, but the other important thing about music is the timing of it. Because when you're in professional teams, you get to the game, you get to the ground 2 hours before. And I worked with a lot of athletes that get too pumped too long before the game, and the only way to go then is down. So you might change the music, or you might change the timing of when they use that music. Or you might change their strategy, get them focused, and they often start the game flat. So they're sort of things that you can discuss. But there's a lot of good stories in that chapter from Sasha and from a few other athletes too.
Okay, good.
Josip,
Tonci, I think it's time for us to move on to champion your leadership.
Yes, step number 4 of 7 steps.
Yep. So I've got a model of leadership that I built because I've worked with a lot of leadership groups in professional sports, and there's 2 big points to make here that I talk about in this section of the book. One is my model of leadership is you've got to lead yourself first. You must lead yourself. Then you lead culture, because you've got to contribute to the team culture. Then you lead others, and then you lead situations. Too many people, they don't think of looking after themselves properly, and then they end up in trouble. They've got to lead the situation. You become like a firefighter. Put out this fire, chase this problem, chase this problem. You're always trying to fix something. That should be the last thing you're doing. If you lead yourself, you look after your lifestyle, you look after your communication, your interaction, all this sort of thing, then everything else falls in place. So that's one big thing on leadership. And that's relevant for all people, not just sport. And the other thing in leadership is, in sporting team, it's a bit different than a business sometimes. Every person on the pitch is a leader. Some players will understand the game and direct others a bit more. I get that, no problem. They're the most experienced, or they're the captain or whatever. But I call that leadership density. And I say you've got a good coaches help players recognize that everyone has to be, when it's your turn, you got to make it happen, right? You don't rely on someone else. You rely on yourself, and everyone relies on you. That's leadership. Yeah. So you got to build leadership density, and you've got to empower everyone to feel like they've got the capacity to influence the team. And leadership is a lot about influence. If you can influence, that's leadership. I'll talk about that. So that's
that influence part. I really like that aspect because many stories and discussions with previous video with Mark Viduka and in his heyday as captain of the Socceroos, and a lot of people would refer to him not your typical captain that gets the huddle up and starts to talk it up and pump it up. He let his actions be the inspiration for the team, and other players like Craig Moore or Schwartzy or someone else would do the actual huddle talks,
Yeah. You don't have to be extroverted. I talk about, look, there's a guy in the book, Dave Anderson. He played in the NBA in basketball. He played in Europe, all over Europe, Barcelona, Fibonacci, Italy, Moscow. He played in 4 Olympics, and he's a real quiet guy. He's introverted. He says in the book, I was a quiet leader. You don't have to be this big, extroverted, loud person to be a good leader. And that fits with this leadership density model, right? He says a lot of his leadership happened in the locker room, making sure guys are feeling okay. They recover from a game. They get up for the next week. Because in a season, you've got to get up every single week, right? There's no time to get down.
Yeah.
You win, you lose, you draw. It doesn't matter what happens. You got 5, sometimes 4, 5 days, 6, 7, maybe sometimes 8 days. You got to go again, and you're in the spotlight. So good leaders help people recover, and they help them get ready, and they help them perform.
Yeah.
You don't have to be extroverted to do that.
Now, when Melbourne Victory football director and former North Geelong Warriors president John Didlitzer, when he was the head of the Players Football Association, he organised a report, or he oversaw a report that was released that talked about the importance of culture in football. And this is something out of the 7 steps, I think, is something that's going to resonate in a major, major way with the viewers of the Oz Cro Soccer Show, because that's something that we know in the past, the culture has been so important in the development of certainly the Australian-Croatian football scene, but this could be applied to many other ethnic cultures and what you're not. But also, I guess, it's the culture of any sporting club, really. Fostering your culture, step number 5. Let's talk about this. This one's, I think, is going to be a very interesting point.
Well, let's think of that Australia-Cuba game to qualify for the World Cup, right? Now, I don't know how many people thought Australia was going to win.
Peru.
But
Peru.
Sorry, yeah, what am I saying? Thanks, Josip.
Yeah.
Australia, Peru, right?
Yeah.
But when Australia's got its back to the wall, I think that's when they probably perform their best. Because part of our culture is underdogs.
Yep.
Fighting spirit. Now, whether they work on that or not, I don't know. But that underdog spirit helps their identity, and then that helps them perform. It channels their focus, their energy, individual and collective energy. And that's partly what culture is about. Culture is about the personality of a group, the identity. And I think there's a lot been spoken about this with the national team, men's and women's. What's our identity in Australia?
Yeah.
You know, are we hard, aggressive? Are we technical? What's our identity? And if you have got a strong identity, then it is easier to perform that way. And one of the people in the book I interviewed was Rowan Taylor. He's an Australian swimming team coach. And he only took over the swimming team for the Olympics 1 year before during COVID. And Australia had the best performance ever in Olympic history in Tokyo last year. And I said to him, what did you do? And he said, the first thing I did, Anthony, was I addressed the culture. And I had a motto that I wanted everybody to know. And every team meeting we had, we worked on culture. And that's the reason he said that the Australian swimming team had their best performance ever. So you need to be working on culture all the time, not part-time, all the time.
Yep. Josip, we saw something. We talked about this a few weeks ago when on the FIFA Plus app, the new documentary Croatia Defining a Nation was released, and it was all about the 1998 World Cup team. But that 1998 World Cup team had a direct influence on Luka Modric and Rakitic and the silver medal winning Croatia of 2018. And that was so big. They talked that every time they went out on the field, they had to prove themselves. They were fighting for a new nation. They were fighting for a little country of 4 million people, and they were going out on the world stage to prove to people. And that was their culture. And we always say, it's the warrior spirit within us. And many experts have said that's probably the reason why genetically Croatians are so good at team sports, because we've got a point to prove every time we go out. Now, even if it's a Dandenong City Hajduk or a Melbourne Knights or a North Geelong Warriors or a Gold Coast Knights, it's almost like we've got a sense to prove. And you get a lot of non-Croatians coming to Croatian soccer teams, and without even knowing it, they become enveloped in that kind of culture. And they can't explain it why, but they become battlers. They've got a point to prove. And that seems to just go hand in hand with that fostering your culture step, isn't it?
Yeah, big time. I'll be interested in your thoughts, Josip, too. But you can see there the culture of a sports team goes beyond just the sport. If you've got purpose, passion, and meaning, I talk about how important they are. If you can engage people and embrace them in the meaning of what they're doing, they go to another level. That's where you can really grow culture.
Yep, and as you alluded to at the start of this topic on step 5, working out your identity. I guess when I hear what's been said here on this topic is, if you identify as that's that environment that embraces that work hard mentality is what I'm about. Then when you step into a club or another environment that has that, you will thrive in that. Whereas if you went to somewhere where it was a bit more, all about technicality, and you don't have all those facets about you, you probably feel like you're like a square peg in a round hole.
Josip, in the chapter, it's such a good point, because I talk about this concept I've created called values congruency.
Okay.
You got to create alignment of the values of the people in the group. That's the idea of culture, right?
Okay, yep.
You want everyone to, if working hard is the culture, you want everyone to understand that.
Yep.
Then you become that instinctively. You don't have to think about it, you become it. So yes, if you are focused on work rate and you go to a club that doesn't really have that, and there's a mismatch, it can actually create stress. Or if you're very, very technical, you've got brilliant skills, and you go to a club that values work rate, but you've never really done that, and then they keep smashing you for work rate, there's a vulnerability that your technical skills might drop off.
Yeah.
I'm not saying they would. Of course, you want that person to grow in their work rate, but you need to create values alignment within the team that you're creating. That's when you get a force.
It links back into that reinforcing your strengths too, I guess, that too.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Let's move along, guys. We're really fast running out of time. But step 6, this is one you'd think is a given, but protecting your well-being, it's very important. Let's talk about that. Step 6.
It's a big topic at the moment, isn't it? Well-being. Look, if you without your well-being, it's hard to perform. But it's that simple. Some athletes, if they've got a lot of stress in their life about their sport or wherever it comes from, they can perform, but it's fairly unusual. And I think coaches and clubs need to focus on well-being more. A lot of people say that's not our job. But there's more and more clubs. I've been working with a couple of clubs on their strategic plans, and they're building well-being for their junior and senior teams, men's, women's, boys, girls, referees, officials, coaches, their parents. They're building into their strategic plan a way to enhance well-being, because well-being keeps people engaged. It keeps them turning up every week. It keeps them at your club. And to be honest, the longer they're at your club, the better they're going to become. The longer you stay in your sport, the better you become. If you keep getting turnover, it's harder. You're always trying to build. That's difficult. If you want a good foundation to build skills, start with well-being. So you've got to look after your people, and you've got to prioritize that. And a big part of well-being is encouraging athletes and everybody in a club environment, team environment, to put their hand up if they need help. It could be help with something. It could be getting a lift to a game. It could be with study. It could be with an injury. It could be with their right strike. It could be with their endurance. It could be something technical. But help seeking, I call it help seeking. We've got to build a culture of help seeking. It comes a little bit back to culture, where one of the things we could have said about culture as well is build a learning environment. I often like to say, good sporting clubs have got a culture where there's a learning environment and a help seeking environment, and then you can cover off on your well-being.
Beautiful.
Brilliant.
I guess, Tonci, that starts to culminate. Starts to culminate into our last step of the 7-step process, mate, in executing this all and execute your performance.
Yeah. Executing performance.
This is where it all comes together.
There's some good stories about how people performed, on the big stage in this step. And I suppose the key message here is that if you want to execute your performance, you focus on your mindset, because by the time you are on the big stage, if you're playing for the Socceroos, you're already good. It becomes about mindset on that world stage. When the World Cup happens, men's or women's, mindset is such a big factor. So you've got to prioritize mindset to execute your performance. We've spoken about strengths. You've got to maximize your strengths to execute your performance. If you're focusing on development areas, you do that at training. In a match, you take your strengths. Strengths win battles. So you bring your strengths into battle. You've got to be optimistic. You've got to give yourself a chance. And that's a big part. We talk about positivity and optimism. Managing the arousal level, like we said. So you're not too pumped, you're not too calm. You can make good decisions. You can problem. The good athletes, for executing their performance, they problem solve in the match. They make good decisions. I'll make this run now. I'll be defensive. We'll attack. They can read that game. That helps execute your performance.
Yeah, I think when it comes to putting all those tools together, and then you get to that culmination of starting to execute, you can probably, even from my own perspective, previously coaching, you get players that just want to execute how they saw it in training and forget about their individual strengths that they can bring, and just try something different. They try and be a little bit too clinical by the book. In their execution, and if they drop a tool or don't bring all the tools in the toolkit, that execution starts to look quite lumpy.
Yep, very true.
I just want to read that little sentence of Ogninovsky. It's so profound. It's page 13. Folks, read this. And it says, from when I was young, I always told myself, no one is superhuman. My opponent might be a better footballer, but with my mentality, I thought I could beat anyone. I focused on my treated every game as a battle. Exactly what you just said. And that whole execute the performance and going there with an optimistic, positive mindset and not focusing on your weaknesses or even the opponent's strengths or weaknesses. You're focusing on your own strengths. And it all comes back down to mindset, doesn't it?
It does. I think it does. Mindset helps you. Mindset actually helps you work. So we can't dismiss work rate, right? In the introduction, I talk about mindset contributes to work rate, and work rate brings out talent. That's not the other way around.
Yeah.
So we can't dismiss talent. We can't dismiss you got to work hard, but it starts with mindset.
Yep,
it's brilliant. This is a fascinating book. We're going to give an opportunity for one viewer who's tuning in live now, whether it's be through our LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, or any other platform, an opportunity to win this. And there we go. The first person to email the correct answer to this question to ozcrosoccershow@gmail.com will receive a free copy of this book. So ozcrosoccershow@gmail.com. And there it is. Name all 7 steps to success as outlined in the performance mindset. So it'll be open until the first person is able to win that award. You can go back, watch the replay on YouTube as soon as we finish here tonight. Or if you've been taking notes of all of those little pointers that we've given you throughout the night, here's your opportunity. We won't be taking any winners in the comment section. They must email us. So they must email us again. We'll give you that email address, ozcrosoccershow@gmail.com. And the first person that sends in that, we'll be announcing this on our socials, obviously, afterwards. They will be getting a free copy of that book sent out to them from Anthony KLARICA. Now, I do have a message here from someone that's actually sent me something direct. Shime Korlich down Melbourne way. He goes, Anthony KLARICA is my cousin. He's a legend. That's nice, Shime, but that's not going to get you a book. You're going to have to email
Still under 7 points.
Email the correct answer. Cheerio out to Shime Korlich. He's a lovely, lovely fella. I haven't seen him for ages, though. But, Anthony, thank you so much. Before we do go, let us know how can people get their book, and there we go. How can they best get their hands on this book?
Well, the book is published by Wiley. It's a big global publisher. There's it's in bookstores. So I did have a quick look, Tonci, and it's in some of the bookstores in Geelong. If they've sold out already, you can ask them to bring it in, or you can buy it online, Amazon, Booktopia. They have it. So it's available, as I said, all good bookstores. A couple in Geelong have got it, unless they might be sold out because I've had quite a few inquiries. Otherwise, it's online, Amazon or Booktopia, or you can just Google it. You should be able to find it somewhere around the world. It's there's quite. Or
even better, go to Anthony. Go to Anthony's website. It's right there on the screen. www.eliteperformance.com.au. To get your hands on the book by going to that website, Anthony. Clubs, soccer clubs, coaching clubs can book you to have a performance or book promotion, or you can come out and talk to these people in person. And have you got any gigs coming up anywhere of note?
I've had some fantastic interest. Mindset's a big deal, like you said before, Tonci and Josip, in corporate and in sport. I've done a couple of big presentations out at Temper Mattresses. I've got a great staff. They bought a copy for every staff member. 7-Eleven, their head office in the city. I went in there, and I've got a couple of big sporting clubs. They bought a whole bulk of books. I take them out and talk about the 7 steps and answer questions and help them build their individual and their club mindset. So if anyone wants me to come out and do that, I'd be happy to talk to them.
Yeah, absolutely. It'll be fantastic. We, mate, once again, appreciate it. We have gone really long tonight. It is worth watching, and those that haven't, it's probably a little bit too late for them. They'll be able to tune in and, get the foot of all these 7 steps. They're absolutely fantastic, mate. Really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for joining us on the Oz Cro Soccer Show, and I hope you enjoyed being on the show as much as we enjoyed having you on the show.
Thanks, Tonci, Josip, it's been fantastic. I really appreciate your expertise, and I love being with you. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, before we go, there's details. Again, the performance mindset, 7 steps to success in sport and life by Anthony KLARICA, available for purchase from all booksellers, good booksellers, online, Amazon, Booktopia, but also from Anthony's website. Anthony, and
sorry, Tonci, I missed that last bit.
Yeah, Tonci went a bit garbled on his internet.
Yeah, I've had some bad internet lately. That's one of those extrinsic factors we talk about. You try and fix. Yeah, Anthony, thanks so much for joining us. Good night.
Thank you very much. Good night.
Awesome. Well, what a way to end the show. We've gone well over time, folks. But very, very quick. For those of you that would like a copy, we'll pop that up again shortly. There's the first person to email the correct answer to this to ozcrosoccershow@gmail.com. They'll receive a free book. You've got to name all 7 steps to success as outlined in the performance mindset. We may have someone. We may have
Oh,
someone.
hang on a minute. Someone's
We may have someone.
rolled the dice
Let's
already.
see if this is right. Harness motivation, boost resilience, sharpen focus, champion your leadership, foster your culture, protect your well-being. Well, you do have a winner, Nick Stefanats. Thank you so much. We've got a phone number there as well. Congratulations to Nick Stefanats. We don't know where Nick is from. Yeah, which city?
He's
He's
related to John in Geelong and with Glenn down at Melbourne Knights, one of the under-16s coaches, I think he's these days.
Yeah, excellent. We do have his phone number, so we'll get his details. There you go, folks. We do have. So you can send us love to hear from you, but we do have a winner, Nick Stefanas. Congratulations.
Fantastic.
You are the recipient.
Good on you, mate.
That was very quick, wasn't it? I am super impressed. Impressed.
Look, I could have talked about these
Josip.
topics all night and into the morning, mate, but we do have to call it quits for the session this week. I've got a million questions I want to send Anthony now.
Yeah, but before we do log off for the night, just next week a big show. Sydney United. We're going to be talking to father and son combination Miro Vlastelica and Adam Vlastelica as well.
Adrian,
for those of you from Zagreb, Adrian. Sorry, what did I say? Adam. No, there's a story about Adrian who went out to Zagreb, Hurstville a few days about that.
with
story.
Tony's
Yes.
boy, yeah.
Chavar Grabovac and those guys, yeah. So we'll talk about that next week as well. We also may get some really good footage if you haven't already seen it. We might play it next week of Graham Arnold when he makes his return to Denzel Park and how much of a profound effect that had on his the Croatian community had on him at a time when he was really, really going through a tough time. That's it, folks. We've got. Thank you so much for being a part of our longest show ever. I think it was well worth it. Until next Tuesday night, we're back again at this time of 8:30 p.m. Thank you so much for tuning in. Laku noć, good night.
Good night.